The station shimmered like a half-forgotten dream, drifting at the edge of a dying star, and she stood at its core like a memory. Forged in platinum, her name was Lady Vestara of the Fourth Bloom, and she was known across 12 systems, not just for her wealth, but for the silence that followed her decisions. Silence that often preceded collapse or conquest. She owned asteroids filled with living sapphires. She controlled ice fields that could cool planets. She was the widow of Lord Calmax, who died during the Iron Revolutions on Zarkis Prime, and no one truly knew if she mourned or merely evolved. She walked with grace and purpose, and today she walked into the janitor's wing. He was scrubbing the floor near a food chute, muttering about alien mold that didn't respect boundaries. His name was Jonah Creed. Born on Earth, raised by orbital miners, and hired because no one else wanted the job of cleaning the decay left by 11 species that processed waste differently. He had no titles, no money, no shield crests. And when the widow stepped into the hall, his first thought was that someone died and she had come to announce it. She didn't speak at first. She merely watched him like she was evaluating a statue. Then she said in a tone that could have sliced glass, "You will come with me to the Galactic Trade Summit." And when he blinked and asked if she needed help with supplies, she only smiled and said, "You will sit beside me, and when the time comes, you will speak." Jonah sat in a ship that smelled like crushed perfume and star metal oil beside a woman draped in neural silk that adjusted its color to her emotions, which for now were unreadable, or perhaps muted by layers of practiced attachment. He had asked her 3 times why he was being brought along, and 3 times she had offered him fruit from a bowl shaped like a star's core, but no answers. Eventually, he stopped asking and looked out the window as the trade lanes lit up with cruisers from every known nation. The Galactic Trade Summit was held on Telvarin, a moon whose soil was infused with mind crystals that recorded every spoken word for legal binding. The delegates arrived wearing fire glass masks and translator larvae, and their entourage numbered in the hundreds. Vestara arrived with one man holding a mop. At first they thought he was some kind of assassin disguised as a fool, but he stood awkwardly and held a packet of tissues in case his nose bled at high gravity, and the guards cleared him with a mild laugh. The joke spread before they even entered the dome. They called him the human rag. They called him Dustwalker. They called him Trade Toy. But none of that reached Jonah, who was too busy worrying if his shirt had a stain from the stew he ate in orbit. The summit table was longer than a dreadnought, and each seat carved from bones of extinct stellar beasts. 23 empires sent delegates, some beautiful, some horrific, all adorned with shimmering intent. And when Vestara entered, she did not bow. She only placed her hand on the seat meant for her dead husband and nodded to Jonah, who stood behind her chair like a misplaced valet. They began, as they always did, with flattery wrapped in threats, praising each other's efficiency while hinting at tariffs that could starve colonies. And it was Vestara who finally broke the rhythm by rising and saying, "I yield my speaking time to the human janitor behind me." Silence collapsed over the hall like dark matter, and then laughter boiled over, especially from the core, who wore their teeth on the outside, and the Vayan, who laughed in reverse. But Jonah just stepped forward because she had nodded. And when she nodded, something in him believed it mattered. He looked at the gathered nations, and did not speak in their tongue. He spoke in the way of miners and mechanics and dockhands. He said, "You argue over roots that cut through chaos storms. While whole moons die waiting for relief, you haggle over percentages while kids cough up red air because no one delivers filters on time." And as he spoke, the crystals in the walls trembled and recorded, and no one laughed anymore. After the session, Jonah tried to slip away back to the shuttle, but the widow told him to walk slowly and look ahead, not down. They passed beings who had watched wars from orbit and commanded fleets, and now, they glanced at Jonah as if he had shifted the floor beneath them. One delegate from the Asheran Depth Empire stopped him. and asked for clarification on his statement about filter delays. And another from the Zalax block asked if Earth was planning a humanitarian fleet. He answered honestly, saying he didn't know much about Earth anymore, but he knew suffering looked the same in every species. And help always arrived late when profit led the way. His voice was rough with regret, and that made it real. The widow watched and said nothing at first, but when they boarded the ship she told him, "You have done more with one truth than I have with 1,000 threats." And he didn't know whether to feel proud or terrified, so he just nodded and sat down, letting the silence stretch like a new skin around him. 3 nights passed on the return voyage, and each one Jonah spent reading reports she handed him translated. Trade routes, broken agreements, footage of starved planets, and botched relief convoys. She told him her husband once tried to fix the system from the inside and was crushed by it. She said she had gathered wealth, not to indulge, but to leverage. But no one would trust a widow who smiled too often or spoke too directly. She told him, "You are something no one expects. You are unimpressive until you speak. And then you become undeniable. And that is what the council fears most." Jonah asked if he was a tool to her, and she said, "Yes, but I am a tool to you as well. And if we use each other right, we break something larger than both of us." He did not answer, but he stayed, and when they landed on Dromund Hive, where the next vote would be cast, he walked beside her without looking down.